Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today. Really excited for this conversation. My name is Abhinav Garg, a product manager at Miston Labs. I focus on data reads, privacy, and walrus. I also have our wonderful guests and partners here, Sahil, Tyler, and Albert. I'll let them introduce now. Sahil.
Yeah. First of all, thanks Abhinav and Sui team for having me. And as Abhinav mentioned, I work with QuickNode as the developer relations advocate, and I help developers get onboarded to blockchain. I create a lot of developer content, videos, guides to help them understand how they can create apps on blockchains and to understand blockchain concepts.
Cool. Thanks, Sahil. And Tyler.
Yeah, thanks, Abby, and the team for having us on. So I'm Tyler Sloan, head of product at Anchor. For those that may be unfamiliar with Anchor, or Web3 infra and development platform, been around since 2017 now. We have a global physical infra network. It spans 30 geo regions with our bare metal nodes, power chains, apps, developers. And really, our goal in a nutshell is to make Web3 as accessible as possible and to simplify complex technologies. So it's been a great fit working with the Miston team on this initiative.
Cool. Thank you. And Albert.
Hi everyone, thanks to Sui for the invitation. I'm Albert, co-founder of BlockPi. We've already started a deep collaboration with Sui on the infra side, and we are fully committed to supporting the full Sui data stack. If you have any questions, whether about service availability or development-related RPC issues, feel free to reach out to BlockPi. We are glad to help. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks to three of you. Thanks for being here. Today's space is about something pretty foundational for anyone building on Sui. How you access data, how that's evolving, and what you should be going about it now. Over the past year or so, or actually more than that, we have been rebuilding the Sui stack, the Sui data access stack, to better support the kind of apps that we are seeing today. Everything from wallets to trading apps to analytics platforms and large-scale infra. With the recent GA of GraphQL RPC and the archival store plus service, that stack is now fully in place alongside gRPC, which has already been in GA since last year. So today is really about two things. One, making sure everyone understands where we are. And second, helping developers actually move forward with the migration. So at a high level, so we started with JSON RPC like most chains. It gave everyone one consistent interface to read chain data, and it worked well early on. But as apps matured, we started seeing the same pattern most ecosystems have hit at some point. That is one interface trying to serve very different needs. So those needs span across like real-time apps needing low latency, analytics teams needing structured queries, wallets needing composable data, infra teams needing full history, and indexers needing reliable injection. And what ended up happening was that, which many of you may have probably experienced, that most teams started building their own custom indexers to work around these limitations. And you know what that basically meant. So running ingestion pipelines, maintaining databases, handling backfills, dealing with reliability issues, and really generally spending a bunch of edge time on data infra instead of your actual product. So instead of continuing down that path where every serious team needed to operate data infra, we moved toward a more purpose-built model with three complementary layers. So gRPC for real-time and protocol level access, GraphQL RPC for structured application queries, and archival store and service for full historical data. So the goal isn't just new APIs, it is to reduce the need for every team to reinvent indexing infra, basically. So now gRPC on full nodes gives you streaming instead of polling. GraphQL removes the need for many custom query pipelines, and archival store and service remove the need to maintain a historical data infra. So together, what we think is that they form as a production data platform for Sui going forward. Now, What this really means in practice is that developers now have clearer choices depending on what they are building. So, if you are building something real time, like a trading wallet or a live dashboard, gRPC from full node may be the right foundation. If you are building front ends, explorers, analytics, or anything needing composable queries, GraphQL simplifies a lot of that work and can often remove the need to build a custom indexer entirely. And if you need deep history, especially for like compliance, analytics, or just backfilling, that's where archival service comes in without needing to manage that storage yourself. So, and in many of these cases, you may actually want to combine two or three of them. You may want a combination of gRPC, GraphQL, and archival store in different places for different sort of sub use cases. So instead of it looking like build app, build an indexer, run infra in the early days, it now becomes like build app and just use the stack. So that's a huge shift because it lets teams focus the edge effort where it actually matters, which is basically your product, really, right? Uh, with that comes the migration piece. So JSON RPC will be decommissioned with the target date of July end of this year. What that basically means is migration should be planned now, not later. So teams that move early will get more time to tune their systems instead of sort of really rushing towards the end, which we really want to avoid. So today's discussion is really about helping teams move from awareness to action. Now, one thing we have heard consistently from developers in the ecosystem is that, hey, all of this tech sounds good, but I don't want to run all of this infra myself. Maybe some there are, some may actually do that, and I don't sort of deny that. There may be some small percentage of folks, but majority of folks, they don't want to run this infra. Because even with the new stack, running everything yourself may mean sort of managing indexers, databases, full nodes, archival stores, and then syncing pipelines across all of them. So that's both data processing and DevOps work. And that's where today's panel comes in. So we are joined by providers who have already stood up the full suite data stack of gRPC, GraphQL, and archival store as managed infrastructure, as a managed service. So that means dev teams can skip self-hosting, avoid running custom indexers, avoid sort of backend synchronization work, and just focus on building your apps. So this is important because migration isn't just about APIs. It's about making sure that developers have an easier operational path forward. So today we have QuickNode, BlockPy, and Anchor with us, all of who have started helping teams transition to the new stack. So the way we'll run this today is I'll start by asking each provider, all three of them, basically a few questions about what they're seeing from developers, what migration actually looks like in practice, and what teams should be thinking about right now. I'll try to keep this practical, focused on real developer concerns rather than architecture theory. And then we'll wrap up with some advice for teams still planning their migration. So, Sahil, Albert, Tyler, just so we'll go through each one of these questions. I'll do a round robin. I'll switch the order for different questions if that works.
Sounds good.
Cool. So the first one sort of comes to mind, at the outset. So now that the whole stack is GA, what does that change for you as infra providers and for the developers building on your platforms? And we can start with you, Tyler.
Yeah, I think for us as providers, it enables us to offer a more complete and reliable service for builders and be part of where SUI's going and kind of the next wave and enabling these types of use cases. For developers, it means really to harness that tech and build richer data-driven applications without, as you mentioned, stitching together own custom indexing pipelines or frameworks or build outs, and not just standing it up, but managing as the product evolves. So I think that combined with enabling more complex use cases, analytic heavy apps, real-time dashboards, DeFi interfaces, high activity or trading applications, I think this is really where the full stack will shine. and us being part of helping on board that community to it.
No, that totally makes sense. That's exactly how we have been thinking as well. Sahil,
Yeah, exactly what Tyler said. From our side, it's the complete stack offering from gRPC to GraphQL to archival store. And from users or developers side, I think they get more clarity now. Abhinav, you already mentioned this in the introduction, that they get more clarity now that what kind of API or what piece of the stack they have to use for what particular kind of operation. They can use gRPC for low latency, highly fast blockchain data directly from the node. They can use GraphQL for complex queries where they do not have to juggle with multiple, JSON RPC calls, or loop through multiple JSON RPC calls, and they can just use the GraphQL and even get the required valuable data, instead of getting the entire raw blockchain data, or which you get from those raw JSON RPC calls. So I think that's what it is. That's the main part where developers who are building on Sui, they get more clarity around what kind of data tools they should be using. So that's the main enablement for developers, I would say.
cool. Clarity is key. I'll keep using clarity in future as well. Makes sense. And I totally agree with the gRPC streaming. I mean, we had WebSocket support with JSON RPC, which we had shut down, I think, mid 2024 because of reliability and maintainability issues. So now I think, like, even from developers that we have heard initially, gRPC streaming has been a huge enabler.
Oh,
Good to see that
100%.
you think the same. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, 100%. WebSockets as a protocol itself is not that much reliable, compared to gRPC, at least, where developers who are working with WebSockets, they have to implement their own logic client side for
Exactly.
reconnections. A lot of time their scripts do not even catch those connection drops, and they are just thinking what happened, and they lose a lot of data. Then they have to catch up again from the point they lost the data. So gRPC in that term as well is much more reliable, where it's a constant stream of data coming to you.
Cool, cool. Albert,
Yeah. So as mentioned, the full Sui data stack is 3 layers. It is a little more complex compared to usual EVM networks. Users need to learn some more things. That's why with our launch, we really want to make sure developers clearly understand what kind of endpoints they can use and what data scope each endpoint supports. So unlike typical EVM RPCs, we've added very detailed explanations right on our RPC reference page. We also made sure to put clear reminders that JSON RPC is going to be deprecated soon, both in our docs and on the user dashboard front end. So this way, try to push users to make the switch as much as possible.
actually, yeah, that's a good point. I think, Albert, like, where even though the stack, obviously from our end, how and based on some feedback and what Sahil mentioned, um, there are these options. There's clarity, but at the same time, when looking from another perspective, these could just mean a lot. So having clarity in the docs, just having very good information out there, all of that is very key as well.
Yes, we also created a video tutorial showing
Brilliant.
exactly how to
Awesome.
use Sui RPC.
Brilliant.
With our mascot, it's called Piper.
Cool.
And
Cool.
that's only one episode, and we in the future we want to create more episodes to
Cool.
teach more detailed tutorials. So to wrap it up, we want to make the stack as easy as possible for the developers to understand and use.
Brilliant. I think it would be great for you to share that YouTube video maybe towards the end in the audience chat box.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. Awesome. So we'll move on to the next one. I'm sure like you have been starting or you have started talking to some Sweep builders already for transitioning them to the new stack. What are the biggest concerns a team have about migrating off of JSON RPC, and how are you helping them work through that? Maybe we'll start with you, Sahil, this time.
Yeah, so on a very high level, the biggest concern I think, and from a developer's point of view as well, is the scope, because this is not a very simple version bumping of a library or of an API, right? It's a paradigm shift where they have to remap every API call to the new stack. The response structure changes. So, and another thing is that some of the API, some of the calls only exist on GraphQL now, meaning that teams sometimes teams may need two clients in parallel to run these. So how we are helping developers is, as Albert said, we have an extensive documentation around each method, around each kind of API, JRPC and GraphQL, both. Then we offer each method's example in multiple languages, so that it just serves a wide array of wide range of developers in whatever language they are comfortable with. And of course, then main part or the main anchor is ease of use of both kinds of APIs via one endpoint, rather than juggling with the different APIs or different API keys. So I think that's how we are helping developers. But from a developer's point of view, I'm just reiterating, sorry, but from the developer's point of view, the scope is the biggest concern. I don't think it should be a concern in the long term, because once they have implemented it, it will be very streamlined and very much better experience from a UX point of view for developers. But just that part, the implementation part in the beginning, can be a little bit challenging. But how we are solving that is by providing extensive documentation for each and every method in various languages for each kind of API.
That makes sense. And yeah, I mean, just to reinforce Albert's point as well. I mean, and like yeah, clarity in docs, clarity on sort of explanations. I think there's this initial learning curve, as you mentioned. So it's sort of a hump that everyone will together will sort of come over. And obviously, we as Miston Labs and building some of these sort of toolings, we also don't want to just sort of throw it over the wall and to you all as providers. So we'll need to sort of make sure that we are plugging the gaps as we are catching them early on. So thank you. That makes sense. Um, Albert, what do you think about that?
Oh yeah. So from talking to um, our three builders, yes, the biggest concern is pretty clear. Like Sayo said, even though gRPC and GraphQL can fully replace JSON RPC in terms of functionality, the core RPC related code, like how you send a request and how you handle the response data, has to be rewritten or even restructured.
Yeah.
That's a one-time increase in engineer work. So how we are helping, we are trying to make that transition as easy as possible. We are providing code samples that work with the 3 SDK. So that way developers don't have to figure everything out from scratch. They can just grab a working example and adapt it. Meantime, developers might find that using gRPC and GraphQL allows them to build their code more efficiently. So during the communication between BlockPy and those developers, um, if we discover better code samples, we can share them with other developer teams.
Got it. I'm
Yeah.
also wondering, like, if there's a role for AI to play here. Like, can we just build skills that people can run through Claude and just like migrate? And Tyler, are you seeing anything like that? Do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I think touching on similar points that Sahil and Albert did, and talking to devs that are making the transition, a lot comes around how complex might this migration be, with the hard deadline and getting started early. I think we want to reiterate that, and utilizing, it doesn't have to be a 0 to 1 process. It can be, utilizing both and starting with, where focusing on where you think are like the most important aspects of you for the transition, and having hands-on support through that. And I think it comes back to operational risk. Obviously, teams are thinking, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And we obviously don't want any downtime. So that's number one and concern in teams that we've talked to. And on our side, really helping abstract the transition, and all of us on this call, as much as possible, for Anchor, offering our familiar interfaces and clear migration path, and the documentation that we do have that Sahil mentioned is, very important, and love the YouTube video that Albert, previously shared with us as well. So we're checking out, but offering both infra during this time period that supports JSON and gRPC, so that you can get a head start and pace yourselves as builders for it. And of course, we have a great, terrific, dedicated support team to help builders, use our infra and focus on growing their projects. So not just putting, developers on an island through the process.
Actually, that's a downtime is a very important thing that you mentioned. Like, migration is one thing on the code side, testing it locally, but when you have to do a cutover, and you may want to do a cutover like in phases across different parts of the application. So that's a real thing to sort of manage. So, I really appreciate your efforts in sort of abstracting that for the developers, and, helping us as well. So that's important. Cool. No, great thoughts. Appreciate it. The next one would be like, so there's the migration part, there's a code change part you mentioned. What infra complexity do developers avoid, by using your stack instead of, let's say, self-hosting? If somebody's thinking of self-hosting this on their end, for example, how would you sort of address them? Maybe we'll start with Albert.
Okay, there are 2 points. First one is from the node maintenance perspective. If you self-host all the data stack, you have to worry about uptime, SLAs for the production environment, and the difference of the maintenance work between running a single node versus a cluster of nodes. Because if you want higher SLA, you need to run a cluster of nodes. So with our managed stack, we handle all of that for users. The second thing is about the cost and the complexity of multi-platform infra. So for the suite, we have archival service, which typically needs a GCP Bigtable. And the Bigtable is very heavy and expensive. And for the full nodes, you might need dedicated servers or VPS instances. Users have to set up, configure, and then maintain all of that themselves. So by using infra like us, we remove all that headache. Developers just use our endpoints, and we take care of the underlying infra. So they can focus on building their app, not on managing servers.
That's a good point. There's a huge point on the archival service actually you mentioned related to Bigtable. And I know, like, the initial conversation when we all were having with you on like using Bigtable to set it up and so on. And I can completely understand, we being in Web3, all of us, and talking about sort of decentralized nature of it, using open source stack as much as possible, but still using a cloud managed service from Web2. I mean, that sort of can be counteractive, but at the same time, it is the best product out there for such a need. But at the same time, we have talked about, hey, could someone want, or would someone want to build the same layer using an open source product like an HBase or something from the Apache world, for example? And we are totally up for it if, like, if somebody would like to build that, we are happy to sort of assist them, support them in any way possible. So that would definitely be, up for future as well. But that's a great point, Albert. Thank you. Tyler, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think Albert touched on a lot of fantastic points, and as infra providers, we know the pain points and deal with the complexity on a daily basis, putting out the fires and the headaches to ensure that uptime and SLAs. And to Abby, what you just touched on as well, like, yeah, I do think in the future, and we've talked about it previously on the H-base or other implementation, as on our side, we like to run bare metal at Anchor, and touching on the full operational burden that comes with that, as your original question on not just provisioning and maintaining hardware, in our case in data centers globally, with the relationships, the security, the electricity, everything, ensuring the redundancy across regions, the smart load balancing between them to handle traffic spikes, to handle chain upgrades and anything else that's going on with the network that you're building on, and really protecting it against performance issues, whether it's rate limits or node degradation over time. Those are the types of things that we worry about, so developers, don't have to. And on our end, too, running all that on SOC 2 Type 2 compliant processes and infra as well, so that every builder, whether you're one of our large enterprise clients building on SUI or just someone with an idea, you're kind of getting that same infra experience from the start. So holistically, though, not worrying about DevOps and critical infra reliability, but really focusing on growing the product and scaling what the team's passionate on, and focusing on their user base.
That's key. I wouldn't even call it DevOps. It's like Sec DevOps, because you
Yeah.
mentioned security. I think that's a huge thing, especially for enterprises if they're like trying to just set it up on their own. It's not just on making sure that load balancing, node degradation, and managing scalability, horizontal scalability. It's not just about that. Making sure like SOC 2 Type 2 or ISO 27001 and things like that, and just like basic security. Uh, yeah, if that can all be abstracted, then why not? Like, this is the best option. Totally agree. Sahil.
Yeah, I think Albert and Tyler, they have already touched based on all the points, from saving costs to scalability. I think that's very crucial, right? Because running a node for a operation is something else, but as you grow, making sure that whatever infra you are running is able to handle your growth, your traffic, is also very essential. So elastic scalability, and Tyler mentioned this, that having a global network of nodes is also very essential in this point, where if or when you start growing, your app starts growing, your user base won't be just limited to one particular region. Your user base will probably grow to a global audience or a global user base. So in those cases, you cannot just have your infrastructure to be serving from one particular location. In those cases, you need your infrastructure to serve from like multiple locations spread across the globes, to serve the least possible latent data to your user bases. Uh, so in those cases, I think, and the part where you can just throw as much as traffic as possible to providers like QuickNode, Anchor, and BlockPy, in those kind of cases, I think providers do come in very handy, where you do not have to obviously worry about scalability, you do not have to worry about routing logics, and of course the security part is an additional benefit of that. I always like to think of providers as the enablers of the stack, where the foundation people or the foundation tech team, they are the creators of the stack, and providers are the enablers of the stack to mass audiences or mass audience of developers.
Very well put, Sahil. And I completely agree with the elastic scalability part. Like somebody who is like just thinking of an idea, starting to build an app, and then they grow, pretty rapidly, and now they
Yeah.
have to like scale. It's just like, yeah, hard to do that on your own, and just you have to now think of resourcing, not just resourcing like infra wise, just like people you have to hire and so on. That just get abstracted with you all. So, totally.
100%. and it also just increases the overall UX of the chain for end users as well, not the teams who are building on the team on the chain, but the end users as well. For example, someone who is not very familiar with blockchain, or who is just getting into blockchain, they do not know what a particular chain is capable of, what the what the processing and what the transaction speeds on the particular chain looks like. They, if a app is lagging, or if the data pipeline of that app is not that much robust, they might think that, okay, there's something wrong with this particular chain, and they
I
might
agree.
not understand that what's going on behind the scenes. So that
Yeah,
having a good robust provider or a data pipeline, I would say, is very much crucial to a chain's overall UX to end users as well.
that's definitely a great point for us. Actually, I've definitely seen that a couple of times in Discord or Telegram. So yeah, totally makes sense. Very
Yeah.
valid. Maybe a couple of more questions before we sort of get to the closing thoughts here. What This is more of like, and there's a great conversation seeing you all sort of very much agreeing with each other in terms of in your thoughts and how you think your platform sort of enable the developers. This is probably a more competitive one, this in the sense that what makes your stack offering like different from other providers that developers could choose. So maybe I'll now switch and I'll start with Tyler in this case.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I just touched on us at Anchor running our dedicated bare metal nodes globally, with dedicated clusters being SOC 2 Type 2 compliant, enabling that lower latency, predictable performance, and a really truly decentralized setup for builders. So not being cloud dependent. So if AWS goes down, and 95% of Web3 happens to as well, your network's still up and running on your distributed hardware. So I think that's a really big one, with no noisy neighbor issues going on. So we run multi-region, US, EU, Asia, with those dedicated clusters. And then in terms of like more specifically for SUI developers and full stack, and going with Anchor for gRPC, the way we have it set up is you're paying for your data, not really your methods. So teams that are doing really heavy calls, like multi get transaction blocks or something of the such, of the like, we're seeing like a 10 to 50x cost reduction on those gRPC calls compared to JSON RPC. And I think that's really important, and highlights the evolution and where we're going on not just having higher level performance for these applications and live data streaming, but doing so and saving costs at the same time, through their use case and through their building process. So I think kind of those two combinations, enable for a powerful setup for teams to not only get started, but to grow and become a top, player in the space, like the enterprise clients that we serve.
Love that. Love that. Sahil, what do you have to say to that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that for teams who are essentially um, security concerned, Tyler already covered this, but if they are concerned around certifications, they can see that we have SOC 2 as well as ISO 27001 certification. So for teams who require those, they already have those certifications with one provider. And for teams who are multi-chain, who are kind of diverse, we do support around 80 chains and 140 plus networks around across the board. And apart from the SUI stack, which offers gRPC, GraphQL, and archival store, we also have another few high level data products, which are streams and webhooks, so that if you wanted to send your data, let's say, to a particular destination, like a webhook, a Snowflake instance, a S3 bucket, a Postgres instance. If you were to do that, you can just do that from one particular stream. You can just send data to all the multiple destinations in just one particular streams, instead of processing everything client side and sorting out everything and then uploading the data to all of these destinations. So basically an ETL pipeline built into the platform. So I think developers who are very much data intensive, they can use features like this to offload their entire ETL pipeline stack or ETL pipeline structure to QuickNode.
That's awesome. And one thing I remember from like conversations when QuickNode were onboarding, I think you folks abstract the access, and this is probably what you're also saying is you abstract the access to gRPC and archival such that developer, they need to send the query only one time from their clients,
Yes.
and if the data does not exist in the full node, they all automatically sort of route that to the archival service without the developer needing to do that on their end.
Oh,
So
100%. That's automatically done on the backend side. The user do not even realize, like, won't even realize that what's happening in the backend. So if a data is within that full node range, it will automatically be routed to the full nodes. But if it's in the archival range, it will automatically be routed to the archival store.
love it, love it. Albert, what about BlockPy?
Okay, so honestly, I won't spend too much time talking about the raw performance because I believe the three of us are all tier one in that regard. We all deliver faster, reliable, basic node service. So what's different about BlockPy? First, I think we are a Hong Kong-based company, and most of our team is in the APAC region, including our tech team, our CTO. That means our human support, when you need a real person to talk to, operates mainly on Asia hours. If you are building in APAC, you'll get responses when you are actually awake, not in the middle of your night. From now until the end of July, we will dedicate significant manpower to support developers with the migration. The second one is that our dedicated node service is something we're really proud of. It's been around for a while, and our operations and the post-sale support have become very mature. Dedicated nodes work on a monthly subscription. So customers' RPC requests go directly to the isolated infra with no rate limit and no usage caps. It's perfect for teams with high volume RPC needs and for those developers are super sensitive to the latency. So when shared endpoints just end ignore for the customer, we've got a solution, another solution.
Brilliant. And I think,
Thank you.
yeah, I totally agree. I think in many cases, like geo availability and the support system would be very applicable for many builders. And, all of your services sort of spread across the globe and, being available in different sort of regions, that really works well in a complementary way as well across the globe. So that's a pretty important point. Agree. Cool. Maybe one last sort of, a small sort of CTA sort of thought on if a team wants to migrate, just like start migrating now, what does the process look like for them on your platform? How would you, like, what would you tell them, like how to go about it? Maybe I'll start with Sahil.
Yeah. So the first and foremost thing I would say is start today, maybe after the call. Do not wait for the deadline to come and just be all chaotic about it. Start today and make it a gradual process, maybe a 4 to 6 weeks process based on the complexity of your data consumptions or diversity of your methods, etc. And I would say first start the process basically looks like where first you would map which methods will uh, technically and practically map to which kind of APIs method. For example, some methods will map to gRPC, and some of your logic will directly map to what is available with the GraphQL method. So first map that. Then the first step would be to, of course, migrate to gRPC read-only methods first, and then migrate the transaction methods, and then later on migrate the complex logics. What if they map one to one to GraphQL, or if they do not, then just use a combination of different methods. And basically the thing is that the complex GraphQL queries, or the complex queries, needs to be migrated at the last. First is very easy for gRPC, which most of the methods will map 1:1. And I think for developers who wants access to these APIs, they can just basically go to QuickNote's dashboard. If they have an account, just create a SUI endpoint, and if they already have a SUI endpoint, they can just start using that same endpoint for gRPC and GraphQL as well. There is an extensive documentation around of how you can use that endpoint for gRPC, GraphQL, both for different APIs or methods. And you can find them at quicknote.com/docs, and just go to the SUI section and you'll find documentation around both gRPC and GraphQL.
Amazing. Thank you. Albert?
My advice is that first set up a test environment and a pre-production stage to run the application against the gRPC and GraphQL there for a long while. See how it behaves under real conditions. Give it some time. And during this period, we're here to help. We offer case-by-case guidance, not just docs, but actual human support from our tech team. We can walk you through any issues you hit, whether it's the request formatting, streaming logic, or error handling. So only when you feel confident that everything works smoothly, then you can roll out to production. So yes, I have the same advice. Just start the migration as soon as possible.
Agree. Yeah, +1. And Tyler?
I was gonna say +2 or +4 on the starting now rather than later, for everyone, and similar sentiment that the guys already shared on kind of the process, with starting in pre-production, and could be that you want to start with read heavy methods on the gRPC side that work, make the most sense for you, get comfortable, get balanced, get checkpoint, etc. Low risk, high impact for really where gRPC shines, and maybe then you start transitioning off the JSON RPC writes, and really testing and ensuring that you're up and running. And then kind of, on the Anchor platform, if you're existing, you can use already your same API key, and, just copy the gRPC endpoint, and you're good to go, as simple as that. And then if you're brand new to Anchor, head over to the platform, sign up for an account, you'll have your key, you can point, the endpoint to your client, and you're good to get going. And similar to what Albert shared, especially during this period and even afterwards, we're really here to help teams. So don't be shy to reach out to the Anchor team during this process, and everyone here on the call is really in support of this movement. So excited to see it grow.
Cool. So 3 things I'm taking from all of you, what you said. Start ASAP. Do it in non-production, obviously, before going to production. Be sort of risk averse from that perspective, and do it in phases, like with sub use cases, sub portions with specific APIs. Only thing I may add there is, like, maybe take a stock of what you have, maybe spend a day or so and see whether gRPC or GraphQL makes sense, or a combination of them. If you need history, obviously you need archival store anyways, whatever you choose. So I think doing some very initial ballpark analysis would be great. actually.
Mhm.
But thank you, appreciate it. If you all want to share any docs links or like the YouTube video as I mentioned in the audience message box, you can do that now. I'll just take like a couple of minutes now just to sort of provide some closing thoughts and wrap up. Um, so overall, amazing discussion. Great thoughts from all three of you on those sort of different aspects, and what you're seeing from the ground and how you're helping teams migrate. So if there are a few things that overall I can take away from the overall conversation, it would be that the data stack is now complete with gRPC, GraphQL, and the archival store all in GA. The foundation for how apps access data in SUI going forward is now in place. Second, the shift is really about letting developers focus on their apps instead of building and maintaining data on top. So historically, a lot of serious teams ended up building custom indexers and pipelines just to make their apps work the way they needed. So the goal is now that most of those problems can be solved by the platform and these amazing providers and their platform. So you can spend more time, more effort on what differentiates your product. And lastly, as everyone has been saying, most importantly, migration shouldn't be something that you leave until the deadline. So JSON RPC is scheduled to be decommissioned by July end, and realistically, migrations across an open ecosystem, they take time. We do acknowledge that. So starting earlier just gives teams more breathing room and avoids like last minute pressure. So if you're still on JSON RPC today, best next step is to simply just start testing gRPC or GraphQL with one of these providers. Talk to them, begin planning the transition. This doesn't have to be big bang, as they also mentioned. You can sort of phase it out gradually. Um, Also want to emphasize that if you run into friction, we want to hear about it as the builders of these tools or the creator of these tools. So migration only works if we understand where teams get stuck. So please reach out to us on Discord or Telegram or any of these amazing providers if you hit the blockers. So big thanks again to QuickNote, BlockPy, and Anchor for supporting the ecosystem and helping make this transition smoother for everyone. And thanks to everyone who joined today. We are excited to see what you build on the new stack. Thank you.